What's up, everybody, and welcome back. It's been a while since I did one of these, so man, I feel like we got some things to cover. And we're obviously going to get into breaking the card down coming up this weekend, right? We'll go through each of the main card fights. But first, I just wanted to take a few minutes and just talk about some of the shit going on in the MMA world, right? Most recently and most notably, it's got to be Sean O'Malley winning the bantamweight title, right? And the way he did so, knocking out Aljamain Sterling in the second round, just super impressive. And man, I did a breakdown on this fight, and when you're watching it live, the first round did feel very even, right? I mean, Aljamain was working his leg kicks a lot. His kicks overall were very effective, and but so were those of O'Malley's. And when you look at the setups and everything from O'Malley in that breakdown, when you slow things down, you really kind of get, and obviously you're focusing on him in the positive moments that he's having, right? So it's easy to just kind of cherry pick that data from the fight. But you're also looking at him and realizing, like, man, he is putting things together. He is making reads, and he is getting his timing down. And the more I watched it back in slow motion, the more I kind of felt like, it kind of felt inevitable that was going to happen at some point during the fight. So, super impressive from O'Malley. I mean, you got to see some takedown defense toward the end of the first round, and then to start off the second round, he staved off both takedown attempts from Sterling and was able to keep things on the feet where he, in my opinion, had a clear advantage. He just understood the range a little bit better. The footwork was a little bit cleaner. His striking, his boxing's definitely cleaner than Aljamain's. But Aljamain has some really good kicks that he was throwing in there, like I said, but live, you kind of give it to Aljo because he did push it up against the cage. But like I said, when you have the luxury of slowing things down and realizing how things build up to that knockout, you realize that there was intent behind everything O'Malley was doing, and kind of hard to pick up on that in the moment. But again, you did get this sensation after slowing things down that he was in control. But anyway, a great performance from someone who, I mean, you got to think, it's wild to think about and you can argue all you want about how O'Malley got to the title, his wins over kind of like guys with not the biggest names, right? The controversial win over Petr Yan, but the way he won the title from Aljamain was definitive. And you got to think, man, the way Aljamain like kind of ran through Corey Sandhagen in that fight, the way he tapped him out, the way he took down Henry Cejudo, he's had an incredible career at bantamweight and impressive performances over really tough guys. I mean, he's knocked off the best of the best at bantamweight, you know, guys towards the top. So, and it's interesting to see that O'Malley was not only able to beat him, but beat him definitively, you know, and it leaves this kind of big question in the bantamweight division. What happens now with Merab climbing the rankings? And Aljamain, in my opinion, really is probably deserving of a rematch, but I don't think he's going to get it because he got finished, right? But, you know, if you look at what Merab's done, it's super impressive, but you've always got this weird thing where one of your best friends is in the same division as you and your career paths are aligning so that you're both vying for the title at the same time in your careers. Like, you're both on that trajectory, and you know what I mean? Now that Aljamain has lost it, I don't know. I feel like Merab should be hunting the challenge for it. You know what I mean? And then they have to work out on them who's going to move up in weight. Like, the more likely candidate seems to be Aljo. Like I said, like a move up might be warranted. I also wondered going into that fight, man, Aljamain's a big dude. What's that weight cut like down to 135 for him? Like, is that taking a lot out of him? Would you strangely see a better, stronger Aljamain Sterling at 145? We don't know, right? But these are conversations that they're going to have. And I know people get mad at Dana White, and there are things, Dana says so many goddamn things that I don't agree with at all, right? But when he's talking about, like, he's a businessman. He's going to look at this from the perspective of, look, we're trying to move the division along. You chose the sport that you're trying to be champion in. There aren't friendships in this. And I understand that from the business perspective, but you also have to consider the fact that they are friends and that relationships like John Jones and Rashad Evans, for example, and multiple other ones do fall apart because everybody has this common goal. And again, when you're reaching it at the same time, things get contentious. And if you want to avoid that, I think the cleanest way is for Aljamain to just move up to 145 and test the waters there, right? If he wants to stay at 135, it's like you might have to be okay with Merab leapfrogging you then because you just got finished. Like, regardless of the fact that you think you deserve that title shot, you might have to, like, let Merab take this one. And then what happens if you win your next fight and you're set up to fight Merab for the title? I feel like a move to 145 for Aljo is inevitable. And he has, again, definitively lost the title. I feel like I don't know. And again, they're going to have to work it out amongst themselves, but it does leave the bantamweight division in a very interesting spot. And it's going to be like, man, Merab, what are you going to do? Because I don't think a move up to 145 is even in the cards right now at all for Merab, especially with the tear he's been on at 130. He's not going to be the one to move up. It's like there's only one person getting talked about moving up to 145. And if you're going to do it eventually, why not? Why delay it? You know what I mean? You have to decide at the end of the day which is more important to you. And this is why, like, I understand wanting to keep the friendships intact, but again, I understand that, like, Dana's not taking the friendship thing into consideration, and as a human being and people with relationships with other people, right? We obviously do, but he's thinking about the UFC in a business, and in a way he kind of has a point. Someone has to give here, right? Like, someone is going to have to sacrifice something, and you're going to have to decide how to make it work amongst you, or whether your dreams are more important than the friendship. You are going to have to choose one or the other in this circumstance, right? Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I mean, I don't know. And again, it's on them to kind of figure that out, but I think the cleanest way is if Aljo's considering moving up, man, just do it. Just do it, and don't take a guy in the top 5 right away, maybe at 145. I don't know, or you do take a guy in the top 5 because you want that recognition, obviously. But I'm thinking, like, you want a winnable fight at 145 to test the waters, and then maybe you're like, okay, now I know I can do this and I can cement myself in this, because I think 10-pound jumps when you're little or big, right? So if you go from 135 to 145, you want to build time and comfortability in that weight class, right? Like, look at what happened when Holloway jumped from 145 to 155. I just think and he fought Poirier, right? I just think that jump is fucking difficult to make, man. Like, it's hard whereas Poirier, for example, used to fight at 145, but he had time to bulk up and settle into that division. It's why I hated fucking Luke Rockhold versus Jan Blachowicz, right? It's like why I didn't like that matchup. When you have time to settle into that division against those bigger guys, you're going to be much, like, stronger and more comfortable there, you know? So it's like Aljamain's first fight up at 145. I don't want to see him fight Volkanovski. I want to see him fight like a top 5 guy, a guy that's a winnable, because it's unknown how he's going to perform at this weight class. And then as his body gets to settle into it, we find out more and more about him. That's the path I would try to take if I were him. But I fucking digress, right? I have no say in any of it, but it is an interesting thing to start to kind of look at and dissect, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, man. Because 135 is so stacked too that if Merab waits for too long, guys are just going to keep passing him by. You got like Umar Nurmagomedov, you got Corey Sandhagen coming up through, you got, you know, all these dangerous competitors that are trying to get their chance at the title, and they're not going to wait on you. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to keep taking fights to keep advancing their career. And do you want to fall into a gatekeeper role? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for them to kind of work out. But, yeah, just wanted to take a few minutes, obviously, talk about that. What other stuff is going on? Anthony Smith picked up a big win over Ryan Spann this past weekend. It was a good fight. I thought that it could have went either way. I'm just looking through some of the headlines here. He's beefing with Alex Pereira right now, which is kind of funny. But that was a super close fight between him and Spann. I thought you could have went either way with it. And I did kind of feel that Smith got the advantage in the third round, but about as close as it fucking gets. The Korean Zombies retirement. How could I get? What an iconic retirement, too. And one of the best retirements that I've seen in recent memory, despite the fact that it was a loss. The Zombie's one of those guys, he was, 36 heading into this fight against Holloway. It's so strange because Holloway has so many fights, but Holloway's only 31 years old. I mean, in terms of age, he would seem to be in like his athletic prime right now. So to see him go out and, you know, be the person that you kind of knew how that fight was going to go. I mean, I didn't know whether it was going to be a knockout or just like a 5-round kind of unanimous decision that he picked up, but you kind of had the feeling that's how the fight would go. And, yeah, I mean, I feel like we were really robbed of a large portion of the Zombie's career, and that portion would have been in his prime. I really think if you look at what he was doing so long ago in the UFC, and he's so good on the ground, and he has good timing with his wrestling. He does have real power in his hands. He has slick striking. I mean, he's very well-rounded. I do wonder if there was a point in time where the Korean Zombie could have became champion. I think that likelihood, that's a very real possibility. Let's put it that way. If he fought all through his prime, I think there's a very good possibility that the Korean Zombie wins a world championship. I mean, he's one of the best fucking martial artists in that division of all time. And I think he just ran into guys that he came back when he was a little bit older, and he ran into guys he was 34 or whatever whenever he came back, right? Somewhere in there, trying to make that run later in his career, whereas he's got guys like Holloway, for example, who are like between the 30 and 30. They're working there. A lot of the guys in that division are getting to work the prime of their careers, right? And he's coming into the tail end of his athletic prime and trying to make that championship run happen, which it does. Look at Glover Teixeira, but I feel like in lighter divisions, it's a little harder because your technique has to be able to keep up with the young guys, and they're fast. Whole different animal down there, I think. And a lot of people were debating online, like, why did he do this? Why did he just charge into Max in the third round? And I think that he realized after the second round that if things continued in the direction they were going, it was inevitable that he was going to lose anyway. So I think he thought, let's go out on my shield. Like, let's make this a brawl. Let's see if I can either make it happen or if I'm going to go out. And, Max got the better of it. So it's just the way it goes sometimes. And I didn't think it was a bad way for the Zombie to close out his career. I mean, in a way, it's very indicative to who he is as a person. I thought it represented everything about the Zombie in one fucking oddly beautiful moment where he got starched, but you were just hit with the reality that, man, it really is over for him, And the way he went out just trying like that, you were like, nothing but respect in my book. I think he just realized that he wasn't going to win the fight if he let it go 5 rounds. So he's like, we'll figure it out right now. And unfortunately, he came out on the losing end. But yeah, fucking incredible career. We were robbed a little bit, I think, of, like I said, his prime, but one of the best 145ers ever. And holds one of only 3 twister submissions. I hit the first twister in UFC history against Leonard Garcia. So, yeah, fucking gangster. And it's a shame to see him retire. A little bit disappointing, but, man, the world moves on. The MMA world just keeps moving. It doesn't pause for anybody. Like we're talking about the Merab thing. Like, you can't sit and wait. Like, your moments are fleeting in this sport a little bit. It's hard to hold on to a title for a long time. You get exceptions like Anderson Silva, like Mighty Mouse Johnson, John Jones, but man, it is hard to stay on top for a long time. Heavy lies the crown. Anyway, let's move on. There's other shit we could talk about, right? Actually, one thing I do want to bring up, not related to MMA, but just like a sidebar a little bit. I competed in a tournament this past Saturday, and I've been competing I've done it a few times at Blue Belt, right? Not a ton. Maybe I'm trying to think 5 or 6 tournaments total. And man, I just cannot find success. At this past one, I go into it and I'm in half guard. I'm on bottom half guard. I got taken down, so I'm down 2-0. And my guard retention was good. The match ended and it was fucking 2-0 was the score. He didn't pass it all, but I just got tunnel vision trying to hit the same sweep over and over and over again. And then in my second match, I got the takedown. I hit an arm drag, got a single leg, and I was on top of him, and I tried to knee cut, and I didn't post on the far side, and he just rolled me in that direction, and then he ended up on top, and when he got on top, he was so much more aggressive, and he was willing to be, aggressive in certain moments, right, that I wasn't, and just put a pace on me, and it made me just think about, I try to say this all the time and emphasize this when I do the breakdowns and stuff, but there is such a big difference between looking at something and understanding what's happening and actually executing that against a resisting opponent. Nothing makes that more clear than going into a jiu-jitsu competition for me, because I do these fucking MMA breakdowns or these grappling breakdowns or even the striking ones, and I'm just slowing things down over and over again until I can pick up a pattern on what these people are doing. But to execute it at the level they're executing it at, I mean, is fucking insane. As evidenced by me going and competing at a blue belt local jiu-jitsu tournament and getting fucking smoked. You know what I'm saying? It just gives you an appreciation for, I can look at things and slow it down and understand what's happening all I want, but to execute it and to develop that timing and to get to that fucking level, it takes a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's talent involved, but it takes a lot of hard work and commitment. I mean, it's a fucking tall mountain to climb, and it takes total dedication at this level, right? But anyway, like I said, just being opened up to the realities of competing and the things that I need to work on in order to get better, but also reflecting like, I talk about these fighters and I'm offering analysis on blah, 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 this, that, and I'm giving you my opinions. But, like, in no way does that translate to execution. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, two completely different worlds. But anyway, let's move on to breaking this main card down, right? So the UFC is in Paris, France this weekend. The main card is going to kick off at 3 Eastern time, right? So it's going to be an afternoon card, which is I kind of like those ones. It's nice for us. But anyway, first fight on the card is Giannis Gamori versus Lachlan. I think I got the name right. I'm going to mispronounce some of these guys for sure. Please forgive me. But this is a super interesting matchup. You know, Giannis is a guy who has a lot of experience in, I believe he came up through Brave, right? One of these guys came through Brave FC. I just had all this fucking shit opened up. Yeah. Giannis has experience in Brave, and then we've got Lachlan, who has experience in Cage Warriors. But anyway, I think this is Lachlan is a favorite going into this one, and I think that it's an interesting fight because they both kind of make mistakes defensively, right? Like Giannis Gamori really, and both of them love to look for the left hand, and they like to counter with it in particular. Gamori plays with his hands low a little bit more. You'll notice that Lachlan, he likes to carry his hands up close to his face, which I like, but he walks into things. It's like his offense is good when he's moving forward. He moves his head, but he forgets to respond defensively after he throws combinations, and there are a lot of opportunities to counter and catch him with big shots. We've also seen both of these guys implement a little bit of wrestling if you look back at both of their fights, right? Like Gamori will take the fight to the ground, but I don't know. I guess the best way to put this is I feel like Gamori finds opportunistic takedowns, meaning they'll be in a striking exchange, right? And he'll be fending off the strikes, and then they get into the clinch a little bit, or they get close when they're striking, and he'll find a way to weave his way into double unders. Whereas Lachlan is much more apt to create the takedown opportunities for himself, right? Like he's much more willing to push the pace. He brings a lot of forward pressure. He'll open things up with his hands, get you pinned up against the cage, and start actively looking for takedown opportunities from there, right? So he's creating them, and Gamori more finds his way into opportunistic positions. But there's also been some things like, even when Gamori gets on the ground, there's some things that I don't like. I think you can manipulate his body weight a little bit when he's on top. And I think that's a little bit less true for Lachlan. Lachlan seems to understand a little bit better how to control people on the ground and how to advance through their guard and get to their back and choke them out. He's got quite a few submission victories on his resume. And I think Gamori has a few too. But, man, this is a hard fight to pick. Like two guys making their UFC debut. I kind of think Lachlan has the advantage heading into this one. I just think we were just talking about and I brought this up, like me competing before, right? Like this past weekend. I feel like in my my second match, I just kind of got big brothered around. And I think that in the UFC, it's very important to push a pace and go first. Right? Even if you're a counterpuncher, you have to feint. Like that's kind of your going first, and your feints have to be legit, or you're striking to draw strikes out of them. Like it really benefits fighters to go first in MMA because you're setting the pace. And I think that Gamori has much more. They both like to counter and such, but I think Gamori has more of a tendency to wait for his opponent to bring the fight to him, and then he looks for his counter opportunities. But sometimes he doesn't find the shot, and he's getting hit while that's happening. And I think that Lachlan is the one who's going to be much more willing to push the pace and go first. And Gamori's much more likely to look, again, kind of like his takedown. He's going to look for opportunities, and Lachlan's going to be creating opportunities, if that makes sense. I think that's the biggest difference maker heading into this fight. I got Lachlan. I think he's going to win a decision. I think he's just going to kind of put a pace on Gamori that he can't keep up with. And again, Gamori's going to be waiting too much to counter. If Gamori is sticking the jab out there, you might see that he's a little bit more of a cleaner striker, right? I think he might have a slight advantage on the feet, but I think that Lachlan is just more, like I said, I think he's going to push him behind the black line, be willing to pressure, and also willing to level change and set up takedowns actively, whereas I feel that Gamori will be the one waiting, and that'll be to his detriment in this fight in particular, right? Really good fight, though. And like I said, Gamori's key to success, I think he has to go first. And if he wants to counter, he's got to be sticking that jab out there and kind of frustrating Loughran and getting him running into things. If he can figure that out, I think he's got a good chance to win the fight. I think this is a really good matchup, right? I think it's more of a coin flip fight than the odds are indicating, but I just like Loughran's willingness to kind of be the aggressor. Next is a light heavyweight fight between, again, UFC newcomer Bogdan Guskov and Volkan Ozdemir. Ozdemir, obviously a veteran, right? But this Guskov guy, man, when you watch his highlights, he is a fucking knockout machine. I mean, he has good boxing. He has really good in and out movement that you don't see a lot from guys in the UFC. And Ozdemir definitely packs power, right? But, man, this Bogdan guy is... his boxing is the real deal. And when he connects, he puts people out and he hurts them. But one thing that I have seen going back through and watching his tape is he is a little bit susceptible to takedowns. I think that you can level change and get to his hips with relative ease. And that might be something that Ozdemir looks to exploit. But the thing with Ozdemir, man, is like you really kind of see his takedowns come from more like unorthodox positions, or when he's defending a takedown that someone's throwing at him, he ends up on the better end of it. Like, he's not exactly the guy that's going to shoot on you from space and take you down. He can wrestle. He has a good understanding of top positioning. Like, he's well-rounded. But I think the path for victory for Ozdemir in this fight is to get things up against the cage and use that veteran experience and that UFC experience to kind of like put it on Guskov and wear on him and take that power away. If he can do that, I think Ozdemir has a good chance to win the fight. But if this fight takes place at space, I'm telling you, this Guskov's guy is in and out movement, right? His understanding of range, his ability to land shots. He can also eat some shots as well, right? But really the only flaws I've seen from him in what I've watched, and you got to consider the level of competition and everything too, but more of his issues seem to come in defending the takedowns. And I don't know if Ozdemir is going to have that smooth transition to get to the hips in the center of the cage like that. I think Ozdemir might have to push things up against the cage. Like I said, Ozdemir has striking power of his own, and they could go out and have like a fucking war, and he could land and put Guskov out. But I just think in exchanges like that, Guskov probably has a better chance to land that blow than Ozdemir does. I think Uzdemir's best chance is to wear him down. So we'll see. I kind of like Guskov in this fight, though. I think he's going to pull it off. UFC debut against a big name. He's been knocking everybody out. Comes in against a guy who also his gas tank has been a little bit questionable, in my opinion, in the past. I think that Ozdemir, it's going to be like, in my opinion, if Guskov can, either establish his range right off the bat, obviously, but if he can fend off some of those takedown attempts from Ozdemir and getting shoved up against the cage, maybe, get his back off the cage and return to space and get some confidence, I think Guskov wins this fight. And I think that's kind of how it plays out. I think I could see this fight, like there are three ways that I'm seeing it, like, and all of them are probably wrong. But in my head, I see it kind of playing out like three ways. Like, I think they could come out and just start banging right out of the gate, like just fucking throwing bombs at each other. I think you could see Ozdemir start looking to push things up against the cage. Or if they start working at space, I think you could see Guskov start establishing his dominance on the feet right away, right? So it depends on the approach that Ozdemir takes here, but I like Guskov overall. Okay. Next fight. This is the one that I think I'm most excited. No, I'm excited for the next two as well. But this is one that I really want to watch. Thiago Moises versus Benoit Saint-Denis. And man, I'm just going to I'll get straight to the point with this one. I like Saint-Denis in this fight. I think Benoit Saint-Denis, I'm probably mispronouncing it. I think Benoit Saint-Denis is one of the best chances for France to have a title in the UFC, to hold a title, like an undisputed title in the UFC. I really think that if you look at him, he's so well-rounded. His victory over Bonfim was most recently back in July was incredibly impressive. I mean, Bonfim is really talented. Look at what he did to Terrence McKinney. And Saint-Denis just kind of really ran through him a little bit, man, like dominated him on the ground. He has a really good kick to the body from that southpaw stance that he likes to stand in, right? Got a good power kick to the body. He has good boxing, and he level changes off of his strikes. He uses his strikes, and his striking is a legitimate threat, so he can level change underneath. And man, I know that Moises is really good on the ground and all that stuff. But again, being the aggressor is important. And I think that Saint Denis is the one more likely to land the takedowns. And I don't know that Moises has the jiu-jitsu to tap him out. I mean, if you look at the way Saint Denis took down Bonfim and just ran through him and choked him out, man, I think Saint Denis has real potential to be something special. I think he's kind of a dark horse in this division right now. And if you watch him, man, I mean, he is super fucking well-rounded. I could be wrong, right? I'm wrong a lot on these. Like, I was really excited about Terrence McKinney, and the more I watch him, the more I think he has a lot of holes to clean up. But Saint Denis looks very polished to me. Very fucking polished to me. I think that he has a real chance to make a run at the title. And I just think, again, I don't want to get overly technical with this one. I just think that the trajectory right now of Saint Denis' career and when he's meeting Moises in his career and all that is just kind of favoring Saint Denis. And I do think that Saint Denis has that real fucking like championship potential. I'm really excited to see this fight, and I got a lot of faith in Saint Denis this weekend. So most likely the fight won't fucking play out that way, but we'll see. I really like Saint Denis is my point, guys. Moving on, we've got Manon Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas, and this is a super interesting fight because Rose is moving up to 125, and man, again, just getting more straight to the point on this one. We could go into how great Rose. I love Rose Namajunas. I think she's amazing technically, and she also has ties to our gym, right? Like the gym that I train at Easton. But these moves up in weight classes where you are going against a girl who is big for 125. Yeah, it's such a tough task, man. Especially in the female divisions, I feel like the difference between 115 and 125, that 10-pound gap is really big. And again, Manon has just been settled into it for so long, and she looks strong against her opponents. You know what I mean? Like, she's able to get the takedown on oh my God. She got the takedown at the end of the round on Caitlin Chikagian when she most recently fought her. One sec, I'm looking it up. I just had it in my fucking head a second ago. Jennifer Maia. She was able to take Jennifer Maia down. And it's like, I know that if you look at, in terms of technical like prowess, I think Rose is probably better and more well-rounded for mixed martial arts. I think her head movement's probably cleaner. Her footwork is probably better. I think that she probably has, like I said, better movement, probably better jiu-jitsu overall. But I just feel that Manon is going to be able to bully her in there a little bit. She's just going to be able to keep marching her down and just keep moving through a lot of the shots of Rose. And again, just pushing her backwards and hunting for the takedown, maybe pushing things up against the cage. But for Rose, the key is going to be that footwork. She's got to have her footwork going back and forth, right? A lot of lateral movement, drawing Manon into traps and trying to tag her and stay out of the way and not get put on a straight line where she's backing up against the cage and she can get pinned there. Because I think in those wrestling exchanges, Rose has really fucking good jiu-jitsu. Do not get me wrong. But it can be harder to pull that jiu-jitsu off against someone as big as Manon. And when you look at the way she took down, like I said, like Jennifer Maia and the way same thing with Bueno Silva, right? She fought Bueno Silva just a few fights ago, back in 2021, and kind of like ragdolled her around a little bit. It's like she is very strong, and I just think that's going to be really tough for someone like Rose to overcome, who's a little bit more slender of build and trying to move up into a new division. So we'll see. My honest opinion on this, I know, like, I hate picking against folks at our gym or whatever, or not like I see her or anything or like I've ever fucking talked to her, but personally, just being honest, I think this is a tough fight for Rose. I think it's very hard to move up in weight like that, and against a girl who's big for 125, and you are probably like a very good-sized 115er. I don't know. Maybe we'll see a whole new Rose though. Maybe she'll have more. Maybe she'll have some snap in her punches and she'll have some like power and movement. But all in all, I just think Manon's going to be able to push her around the octagon, and that's the biggest difference maker in this one. All right. Let me get back to my tab. Last one: Cyril Gane versus Sergey Spivac. This is going to be an interesting fight, I think, because in a weird way, I think it depends on how it goes. It'll validate John's win even further. Like, if Sergey Spivac is able to go out and kind of dominate Cyril Gane, it'll do a little bit to take away from John's win. But I'll tell you guys right now, if you look at the way that Spivac controlled and dominated Derek Lewis, his understanding of how to manipulate bodies in the heavyweight division, it went from being like a few years ago watching him and thinking, okay, who knows how it's going to play out? Spivac is elite now, I think. I really do. His wrestling is like the kind of wrestling that you want to see in the heavyweight division. Look at my fucking hair's all fucked up. But I think that he has real power in his hands, but he's able to just get into position on guys that are big, that are hard to take down traditionally, and just toss them around. He has really fucking good throws, right? And he has a really good understanding of how to pin people down and hold them down, right? He's good at keeping you down once he gets you there and raining down ground and pound. So it's going to be interesting to see how Gane responds to that. And if Gane goes out, my point is if Gane can go out and dominate a good wrestler like Spivac, everyone's going to look at John and go, damn, look how elite John's wrestling must be then. Because look at what Gane just did to Spivac, who's a really good wrestler. But if I'm being honest, guys, I know Gane has really good footwork, really good movement. I think Spivac wins this fight. I think Spivac, that wrestling, like I said, I think he's just going to grab a hold of Gane at certain points in the bout and bully him around. You know what I mean? I just think he's going to get a hold of him and fucking kind of do whatever he wants in those situations. Key for Gane is going to be to get that footwork going and keep his back off the cage, etc. But I don't even know that matters. Spivac will just grab a hold of you and toss you in the middle of the cage. He'll work takedowns up against the cage. He'll work to get around to your back and get the body lock and keep dragging you down and hitting mat returns. I mean, people, you want to talk, there's like, again, like Spivac's one of those guys who I think could hold the title. With John running things, it's so difficult, but the way he's been looking recently, man, I mean, I thought that his win over Derek Lewis was super impressive, and he's just only gotten better. And I think he's a real fucking force in the heavyweight division. And I thought he would be the favorite heading into this fight. So I got money on Spivac, man. I like the wrestling, and I think Spivac has power of his own. I think he's going to disrespect some of that fancy stuff from Gane, and he's just going to look to grab him. And when he gets a hold of him, I don't know that Gane's going to have the responses on defense necessary to keep up with Spivac chaining things together constantly, because he's willing to do that for a big guy. He'll chain wrestle. So I got Spivac in this one, man. But anyway, enough of me rambling. I think that's going to wrap this one up, guys. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It's always funny when I take a break from making these and then I have to talk again for like 30 minutes. You know, it's hard to have a conversation like on your own. Weirdly, like no one's bouncing ideas off you, but when I haven't done it in a while, it's even harder because it's like I'm knocking all the rust off as I do it. So I'm working on it. Another thing too, I am actually working on. I mean, I have the camera set up and everything. I just bought them. I got all the fucking shit I needed. I'm trying to work on having in-person podcasts here. So I'm going to be talking to like my professors, instructors, shit like that. Maybe some of like, I'm hoping to get local fighters from Denver in the area in on the podcast and start building from there, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I would like to eventually start talking to folks more often, so it's not just me talking into the fucking camera. And I am getting feedback and people countering my points live so that I'm not just, my own thoughts aren't just running away and I'm forgetting to cover all kinds of shit. But anyway, I will let you guys go. Again, thank you as always for tuning in. If you guys are new to the channel, hit subscribe, thumbs up, all that good shit we have to ask you to do. And otherwise, have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.